The San Francisco 49ers are in the midst of a truly difficult season. That loss against the Buffalo Bills in Week 13 was a big setback.
Coming into the game, there is this sense of optimism surrounding the team. But once players like Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Deommodore Lenoir went down with injuries, that optimism kind of went away.
After the game, George Kittle talked about that next man up mentality. Is that really a practical approach, especially given the 49ers' current situation?
Well, it's a necessity in football. It's both a challenge and an opportunity. You have players stepping into roles they may not be ready for, and that can affect individual performance and the team as a whole.
Have the 49ers had success with this philosophy in the past, or have there been times when it's backfired?
Well, last season when Elijah Mitchell was injured, Jeff Wilson Jr. stepped up and filled that role pretty well. But then a couple seasons ago, both starting tackles were injured and the replacements really struggled. The offensive line as a whole suffered. It's definitely not a foolproof solution.
It felt like a turning point in the game when McCaffrey left early with that knee injury. How big of a loss was that, considering his strong start and the team's already dealing with so many injuries?
Losing someone like McCaffrey is always tough. But in this case, it's particularly damaging. He's such a dynamic player on offense. He can create opportunities even when the defense is focused on stopping him. With him out, there's so much pressure on the other players, and the offensive playbook becomes more limited.
So with McCaffrey out, how do you see the offensive strategy and play calling changing for the rest of the season?
Well, they're going to have to rely more heavily on Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. They'll probably have to play more conservatively, too. Focus on shorter passes and a strong run game that'll help protect Purdy and control the clock. The defense is going to need to create more scoring opportunities.
What can the remaining offensive players like Kittle, Samuel, and Purdy do to adapt to these challenges and make a push for the playoffs?
Kittle and Samuel are incredibly talented. They're going to have to step up their game even more. We might see Kittle being used more as a safety valve for Purdy, and Samuel could be utilized more in design runs to take advantage of his explosiveness. The key is going to be creating those mismatches and finding ways to exploit them.
Purdy's had quite the season so far. What does he need to do to help turn things around, especially with the weakened offensive line and limited weapons?
Purdy's performance is going to be crucial. He needs to avoid making mistakes and be decisive with the ball, get it out quickly to avoid pressure. We know he has potential, but he needs to be more consistent in these tough circumstances.
Will the coaching staff need to make big adjustments to the offensive scheme, or is it more about individual players stepping up?
I think it will be a combination of both. The coaches will need to adjust their play calling to highlight Purdy's strengths and work with the players they have available. Ultimately, though, the players are the ones who need to execute and make plays when it counts.
Beyond the offense, the defense has also had its share of troubles. How does losing key players like Nick Bosa affect their ability to maintain their usually strong performance?
Bosa is a difference maker. Without him, the rest of the defensive line is under more pressure to get to the quarterback. They'll have to get creative with blitzes and rely on the secondary to hold up in coverage.
We know the 49ers are known for their defense. What can the coaching staff do to adjust for the losses on that side of the ball and make sure they stay strong defensively?
They'll need to play to the strengths of the players they have left. Guys like Fred Warner and Talanoa Hufanga will need to step up as leaders and make plays. They might also use more zone coverage to help minimize the impact of losing their top cornerbacks.
Stepping back a bit, have there been other teams who have been able to overcome major injuries and still find success? What made them so resilient?
The 2017 Philadelphia Eagles come to mind. They lost their starting quarterback Carson Wentz late in the season, but Nick Foles came in and led them to a Super Bowl win. They had a few things working in their favor: a really strong defense, good coaching, and a belief in their system. Plus, the team really rallied around Foles, who played with confidence and composure.
What lessons can the 49ers take away from that Eagles team? What are the key things they need to do to handle their current situation?
It all comes down to keeping a strong team culture, trusting the coaching staff, and having players who are ready to step up when they get the chance. The 49ers already have a good foundation, but they need to stay united and keep their eyes on the prize.
Even with the injuries and the losing streak, is there still a chance for the 49ers?
But football is all about resilience and determination. If the 49ers can come together, execute their game plan, and capitalize on opportunities, they might be able to turn things around.
What specifically needs to happen for the 49ers to make a playoff push?
Purdy needs to be consistent. The offensive line has to protect him. And playmakers need to emerge on both sides of the ball. And of course, they need to avoid any more major injuries, which is tough in a sport like football.
Their schedule's pretty tough for the rest of the season. Can they really overcome these obstacles and make it to the playoffs?
It's a long shot, but it's not impossible. They'd have to win almost all of their remaining games, and they'd need some help from other teams in the playoff race.
What would you say is the biggest factor in determining how the rest of the season plays out for the 49ers?
It's their ability to adapt to all this adversity and keep believing in themselves. If they can stay focused, stick to their game plan, and take advantage of their opportunities, they might be able to salvage this season.
We've seen the 49ers bounce back before. Do you think their culture and their competitive spirit are strong enough to overcome all of this?
It's a real testament to their culture and their competitive spirit that they're still in the fight for a playoff spot after everything that's happened.
As we wrap up our discussion about the 49ers' tough season and what they can do moving forward, is there a final thought-provoking question you'd like to leave our listeners with about the future of the 49ers?
Well, with all the injuries they've had this season, the big question is how they'll approach their roster decisions in the offseason. Which free agents will they go after to meet their long-term needs and build a more well-rounded and durable team for the future?
That's an important point about the lasting impact of this season. How do you think these injuries will affect their strategy for the draft and free agency?
They're going to have to focus on building depth at key positions, especially on the offensive line and in the secondary. They'll probably be looking for players with a track record of staying healthy. It's about finding that balance between star players and dependable backups.
Are there any specific positions or types of players you think they should target to fill those needs?
A versatile offensive lineman, someone who can play multiple positions, would be huge. They could also look for a safety who can create turnovers and a tough physical cornerback to strengthen the secondary. And when it comes to free agency, maybe a veteran running back who's known for his durability. He could offer some valuable support and guidance to the younger players.
Besides making personnel changes, are there any bigger picture, philosophical, or strategic adjustments you think the 49ers might consider based on what's happened this season?
It might be time for them to rethink their offensive scheme, maybe incorporate more plays that get the ball out of the quarterback's hands quickly, and they could shift to a more balanced offensive approach to try to reduce the risk of injuries to their key players.
So these struggles this season could actually lead to some major changes in how the 49ers build their roster and approach the game moving forward.
I think so. This season has definitely exposed some weaknesses. It's forced them to look at their depth and think about long-term sustainability. It's a chance for them to learn, adapt, and come back stronger in the future.
This has been a great discussion. Thanks for sharing your insights about the 49ers and their outlook for the rest of the season.
It was my pleasure.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.